welcome to this video. This is not a self-practice. This morning I needed to put together the next class that I am going to be teaching live on my platform Move with Adell. I'm not, for better or worse, one of those yoga teachers that can just come up with a class on the spot. I like to have a sequence prepared. So I like to begin by going into the peak pose. Revolved Hand big toe pose is what we've been working on the month of July. And so this is 8 o'clock in the morning. I haven't even been for a walk, totally unwarmed up. And I just give myself a chance to notice everything that's difficult about this pose, having done no warm up. So the balance, the sensations in the legs, the twist. And I like to do this because I am hypermobile. I don't really struggle with anything kind of flexibility related. I also do this for my job. So I know that things that come easily for me are very, very challenging for others. So this is just kind of my way to help me feel maybe what other people might be feeling. And kind of, meet people where they're at. And so then one of my favorite little methods that I might do is to play around with that same shape of the body, but with gravity pulling you in different ways. So kind of orientating it in different directions. And so that's what I'm doing here. And just starting to kind of get some ideas for things that could fit into a sequence. I have lots of different tools for coming up with a sequence. In fact, I have a whole entire online course about it. And I never ever use all of my tools at once. That would create like a 16-hour long class. But yeah, just kind of playing around with variations of that same shape and some of the things that might help people's bodies to become prepared for that peak pose, that Parivrita Utthita Padangusthasana. And so then I'm kind of hitting this pose, and I remember at this point, years ago, I came up with this transition, and I've always loved it. And I always try not to overuse sequences or transitions. But in my older years of a yoga teacher, I've learned that it's okay to repeat things. In fact, people like to see things repeated because they're like, oh yeah, I remember this. Let me try it again. So I thought, yeah, that little sequence of kind of wrapping your arm under your leg in a child's pose to grab the opposite ankle and lifting straight up to that twisted 3-leg down dog and then flipping over to that, whatever that pose would be called. That's something I decided, yeah, you know what? It's been years since I taught that in a class. I think it's time, I could totally reuse that now. So anyway, I'm kind of playing around a little bit more. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, IT band can be an issue for people here. So that's a little nerve floss that I'm hitting that can be good for IT band discomfort. The lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. As of today, I've just finished putting together a little nerve flossing course. So if you're interested in learning, I think it's 15 or 16 different nerves and how to mobilize them, then I'm your girl. Anyways, so now I'm just, in my mind, lots of things are happening here. I'm kind of going through all of those little poses that I just played around with, and I'm just thinking, I'm thinking okay, what could I start off with? And I don't always do this. Very often I'll come up with this sequence first and then I'll play around with a warm-up. But because I myself was feeling, this is what I'm doing here, I myself was feeling like I needed to kind of open up my thoracic spine a little bit. I was thinking what can I do to go ahead and help people's spines open up in that twisting, for that twist, and to encourage the twist to come from the spine and not the shoulder blades and all of this. And what am I doing here? I don't know. Things going on in my head. Oh, I remember. So then I'm thinking about okay, it can't be like overly twisty as well. Like I've made that mistake before where I've got like, all of these variations of that revolved hand big toe pose, doing it on your belly, on your back, in a down dog, and as an arm balance. Like it can be a bit too much. And so I'm thinking like, what could I leave out? What could I keep in? And here I'm like, okay, so I think if I start off with something like this to get the thoracic spine moving after like, obviously like some centering in, some breath, all that good stuff that we do at the start of a yoga practice. And this is a move that I mentioned her already in my last video. The physio, Dr. Jen Crane, I got this from her. It's brilliant for, just getting that twist, being able to pause and breathe as you open up and shifting your hips so that your weight is equally distributed. So yeah, I'm totally stealing that from her. And yeah, so I think we'll start off with that, then some cat-cows. And I like to kind of build everything around some sort of sun salutation. So if you've been practicing yoga for a while, you may know that there are a few different variations of a sun salutation. There's just the sun sal A in Ashtanga, and then there's a lunging sun sal, that's what I call it. And then there's the sun sal B from Ashtanga. So this is more of just a sun sal A, no lunges. A variation of, to act as a warm-up. I'm just thinking about, helping people kind of open up now, like the IT band, the ankles and toes, to prepare for this twisty standing posture. So obviously we'll end in down dog, and that's where I'm thinking, I need to add sensory input. So this is a big thing in like functional neurology, is the importance of adding sensory input to help us move better. There's a whole bunch of science behind it, like lots of different reasons why it could be beneficial. So I like to just throw that in towards the beginning of a movement practice. And then I'm thinking like, I could just do it kind of as this twisted down dog, and then move into this little move, which has already been part of a previous flow that's part of the work that we were doing this month. So just thinking, sometimes I'll do stuff as I'm kind of playing around and just coming up with ideas. But actually, I think as I've matured as a yoga teacher, I realized that it's really so much less about the sequence and the transitions and the peak pose. And it's so much more about just what you bring to the class. And so I try not to get too bogged down in like, is this movement just perfect? Is like, should I put something else here or whatever? And instead I'm thinking about more like, what can I say here that can remind people to just freaking love themselves, and just forget about the outside world for a minute and just be with themselves in that mindful attitude of not judging or criticizing or even trying to change anything, but just being there. So anyways, so I've started kind of putting together a variation of a lunging sun salutation. So to me, that's, like I said, where you go from that standing forward fold at the front of the mat straight back into a lunge. And obviously I'm adding in some of the things that I've kind of been thinking about and playing around with that help open up that IT band, or not open up, that's such bad terminology, but you get me. Give a little love to the IT band, the thoracic spine for the twists, and here I'm kind of playing around with how I can add that movement in. And that is a movement that I would totally do in my self-practice, but I did that and I'm like, I don't want to discourage people, and I know that most bodies probably can't do that, and that movement of like tucking your leg underneath you from that reverse tabletop position is probably something that I would work towards as a peak pose instead. So I left that out and moved on. And now I'm thinking like, well, I want to go to a lunge from here, but I know that most people can't like pistol squat from the ground. So initially here I'm thinking like, okay, I'll just give them a bit of momentum. but I've already kind of like put a pin in it. I'm like, come back to that, Adell, because that's not going to work for everybody. So as you can see, I'm just simultaneously kind of piecing together some of the movements that I thought would be nice, and also thinking about how does this work in other people's bodies. And okay, so here I forgot, I was about to go back to the top of the mat, but I was like, wait, have I done a vinyasa yet? And I know you don't have to do vinyasas, but I think it just goes back, for me, it goes back to when I was a baby yoga teacher. I had just come back from India, and a woman in the next town over had opened up a yoga studio and very kindly gave me a job, knowing that I was fresh out of my 200 hour. So she sat into a couple of my classes to give me feedback. And one of her pieces of feedback was like, oh, I love how creative your sequencing is, but people want to feel like they're flowing. So maybe just make sure you throw in a vinyasa here and there. And that's always stuck with me. So anyway, yeah, I'm kind of playing around with like, can I do this as part of the sequence where I end at the back of the mat and we just do a different walk to the top? Because I want to give some time in the sequence to the feet and ankles and toes. And so yeah, just going through it now on the other side, kind of getting it cemented in my brain. Very often when I do it on the second side, in this case, the second side is kind of my tighter side, my weaker side. So I might think of some other things. But yeah, just kind of going along and thinking, I think this will work. I like this. So another thing that I'm considering as I'm going through this sequence is, first of all, like, are there any little adjustments that I can make that would make this more enjoyable for somebody that doesn't have my body? But I'm also thinking about not just adjustments, but little neuro drills. And so I've mentioned a nerve floss, I've mentioned sensory input, but there's so many other things. And so, yeah, I'm thinking like, is there a visual drill? Is there a vestibular drill? Is there something that I could do with the cranial nerves? Maybe there's a breathing drill to activate an area of the brain stem to help people kind of feel this better. And so that's kind of what's going through my mind as I'm also just continuing to move slowly through this sequence and just check how it feels in my body. And at this point, I was like, oh yeah, I totally want to do this arm balance. Sometimes I forget because I know that a lot of people, they find me on Instagram and they see that I can do like all these handstands and arm balances and stuff, and then they come to practice with me. And I feel like over the years I've kind of overcorrected. I don't want my classes to all be like so strong and just, yeah, super like inversion and arm balance based. And as I said, I've realized that over the years I've overcorrected on that. So I'm trying to bring a little bit more into that, like give people the opportunity to try arm balances. Like, oh yeah, people do want to do that. They just don't want to do it like too much or all the time. So yeah, playing around here. So this is one of my favorite tools for sequencing is, I call it the boomerang tool. So whenever you do a sequence, you have to go back the way you came so often. And here is the case. This is one of the times when it's happened. I realized that going in reverse is actually going to go better for my sequence than the original direction of movement that I went in. So you'll see now, I'm going to do this sequence again, and you'll see how it kind of comes together to go through that like arm balance, Skandasana, Parivrita Utthita Padangusthasana movement backwards to how I originally did it. So yeah, so I've added on, I'm also thinking about like maybe if we're doing this sequence for the second time, I could offer that little movement back to tabletop hands free on the second time around. And this is also where I start thinking, well, this movement requires a lot of stability. How can I give people a little boost in their stabilizer muscles? And for me, that means brainstem. And when I think of brainstem, I think of the visual system, the cranial nerves, and I think of breathing drills. So I'm like, okay, how about I add in a breathing drill here? So you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm adding in a breathing drill that will help with the reflexive stability of the shoulders and core. And then, yeah, so I'll probably put that on the first sequence, obviously. So this is kind of a mixture of like things that I might do on the second time round, things that I'll add in for the first time round. And here I'm going back to this little transition. And I was honestly thinking, I need my boyfriend right now because he's the opposite of me. He's super strong. He's a rugby player, but so inflexible. And I was like, what would he do? How could he get to to this position? And then I'm like, oh, wait, we have these tools in yoga called blocks. But first I got distracted by the song that was coming into my ears and was doing a little dance. Yeah, okay, so I'm like, okay, wait, we've been doing this little movement at the top of the little sun salutation where we go from Uttanasana to a little like quad stretch. So I'm like, I could totally bring that same movement in, give people the opportunity to use blocks and break that movement down a little bit. And that might make it more accessible. So that's where I've gone with that. And you'll see later on in this video where I add in another favorite kind of drill for the cerebellum and that kind of like finalizes it. But I'm getting ahead. So here, this is where I'm like, okay, so if I go warrior 2 here and then give people this fun transition to step back into the reverse hand to big toe pose. And then we go skandasana into that arm balance. So that's the kind of boomerang, the backwards sequence. And I'm like, oh yeah, and like, because, I had to get my yoga teacher brain on. Oh yeah, let me offer blocks here. And I think it's nice as a yoga teacher. I try to, like, if I offer blocks, then I try to use the blocks. Because, yeah, people who don't use blocks probably don't need that demo, So just trying to be mindful of that, put that into practice. And then, yeah, I'm like, do I want to carry on with this? What could I add on? And I'm like, can I make that more like stability? Like, and then no, just keep it simple, Adell, stick to what you're doing. And then I'm like, what could I do? How, like, what's a new way that I could like walk to the top of the mat? And then I'm like, okay, no, I didn't come up with it then. I was like, whatever, I'll think of something. That's, okay, so here's where I'm like, ooh, sharpened Rombergs, which is this big toe to heel, feet completely straight like you're on a balance beam position. And this is obviously harder to balance in. And I thought, how can I kind of make it a little even harder to balance? Like maybe I add some like arm movements and twisting. And it just means, because it's harder to balance, it means you have to work harder to balance, right? It means that your stability muscles, those deep core muscles around your spine, etc., are switching on more. So that's why I like it. And then if you keep that stance, I was like, oh, and then you're kind of in a more similar position to that squat, like that little movement at the back of the mat. So that's where it all has come together. I'm like, okay, so from the start of this class, I'm going to have people in that sharpened Romberg's position to go through the start of the sequence. And okay, and here I'm trying to figure out how I can like compress the lungs a little bit more for the breathing drill that I mentioned. But I think I'll just do something else. Oh, and yes, I did literally just fall right there. It happens, Yeah, so just going through it all again on the second side, making sure that I like it. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is, it's good for people's like feet and ankle mobility. So that'll be good. And the theme of this class, so every month on Move with Adell, we have a movement focus. So we focus on a specific posture. And then we also have like a theme. And so the posture obviously has been this revolved hand to big toe pose, but the theme has been the mantra, I'm not perfect and I never will be. Just embracing our imperfections, embracing the fact that we're messy, we're chaotic. That's what makes us human. And so that's another one of the thought processes that I'm having as I go through this is like, if people wobble or if something is difficult or whatever, like just remind yourself how imperfections are part of being human. And if you were perfect, it'd just be so boring, right? Perfect is boring. But then I'm like, yeah, last time we walked to the top of the mat, we'll do it that way. And then down, just to come up with a few little counter movements that feel good after all that for the cool down. So I usually don't really plan much of a cool down because I think it's easier just to kind of let people feel what they need in their own bodies. But yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm pleased with that. I think that'll work. So voila.